Hello everyone! I am on my computer this time instead of on my phone, and I'm in my living room instead of by the window because last video I had to submit it, but it was terrible, so we're just gonna restart. Just pretend you didn't see that one. This is the one that matters. We're gonna be talking about chapters 5 through 8 of our booklet, and we'll just get right into it. So yeah. Alright, so chapter 5 talks about different types of reading. There's active reading, and then there's instrumental reading. And so active reading is where you read something thoroughly and mindfully, so you really comprehend what you're reading and like the definitions of what's happening. You understand all of what you're reading, and you really genuinely understand it. You're not like tricking yourself into understanding it. And then instrumental reading is where you're kind of going through and you're trying to extract certain pieces of evidence for your client, and it's always in the best interest of your client. And the problem with that is that you may have a misunderstanding. So say you extract a certain piece of text that you didn't read the context around it, and you just are like, oh, this will help, but you actually didn't read before or after, and so now you misunderstand that short piece of text, and that can cause an issue because now your opponent might be able to combat that, and then you might lose a case. So they say the best way to read as a lawyer, or the best skill to have, is active instrumental reading. Is where you put both of those together and you thoroughly read through the text before and after, and then you extract the pieces of information that are most important or in the best interest of your client, and you put them into your argument so that you understand and you're using it properly. Now we're going to go into what else it talks about. So it talks about the major and minor premises. And I actually do have my notes here because I'm not going to remember everything. I'm human just like you, so bear with me. For real. Okay, so you basically want to give the judge no choice but to agree with you. So when you're placing your argument and you're doing your major and your minor premises and you get your conclusion, you kind of want to not let the judge think for himself. You want to lay out the facts in a way that there is no dispute against what you're saying. That you basically are giving the judge all of the answers he needs and he doesn't have to think for himself, because judges are human and they don't really want to work extra hard. They do not have to. And so it just talks about how you want to formulate your arguments properly so that they don't have to use their own discretion. You want to give them certainty of the law, which means that they don't doubt whatever legal rule you apply to the case or its content. And then it talks about how you don't want to have a closed mind. When you're formulating your arguments, you kind of want to try to have an open mind and be able to understand different perspectives or circumstances. And when you have your minor premise, you always want to make sure it's fact-based and it's truthful, as I've stated before in my last video, but you always just want to make sure it's a fact and that no one can dispute it on the grounds that it's just untruthful or whatever it may be. And you always want to have it pertaining to your major premise on what so if your major premise is rule, your minor premise should be a fact to that rule, if that makes sense. Hopefully that does. And then it talked about just different, so let me just look for a second and then I'll fill you in a minute. Oh yeah, it talks about different ways to ground your arguments, but we kind of talked about that last video. You just want to make sure that you're grounding your arguments and that there's no way that you could dispute your argument and you've asked why so many times that you cannot answer the question why. You always want to be questioning yourself when you're formulating your arguments, is there another perspective? Is this what it really means? Why is this really what it means? Why? Where did this come from? You always want to ask yourself those questions because 9 times out of 10, somebody else is asking those questions and they're going to have a better argument than you. So you always just want to make sure that you have brute facts. And we'll get into that actually, since I didn't even touch on that. So brute facts are more persuasive than compound facts. And we kind of talked about this in class. But brute facts are where they are just, it is what it is. They are what it speaks for itself, basically. In compound facts, you need more evidence or more information to talk about, like to persuade someone. Because they kind of have to infer for themselves. It's like an inference. So you always want to use brute facts because the example they used was a brute fact is I have a headache. Nobody is going to be like, are you sure you have a headache? Where is the pain? Why do you have a headache? How do you know it's a headache? But for compound facts, if you are going to state like, oh, I saw Kirsten cheating on her boyfriend, everybody's going to have questions. They're going to be like, why? What was she doing? Where was this? What were they doing? Did they kiss? Like, they're going to have so many different questions that it's not a real way to persuade someone. So I'm at my time limit, so I'm just going to go now. But hopefully that helped you guys. Let me know. I don't know. Bye.